When you forgive yourself for the things that you did when you were just trying to survive, a brand new version of you emerges. Mel Robbins. Thank you for joining us for our 14th episode of Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality, as we discuss the topic of forgiveness and harboring resentment within the realm of addiction. But before we dive into our main topic, please allow us a moment to introduce ourselves. I'm Jackie Lyons of Akashic Energy Healing.
And I'm Elizabeth Maria of Elizabeth Maria Unlimited. And together, we're the hosts of Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality, where we navigate the power of personal growth and self-discovery through exploration and acceptance of our shadow selves. So welcome to today's episode, guys. I am just feeling so many beautiful energies flowing through me, Jackie. And anyways, guys, before we get started, I just wanted to share such a beautiful moment between me and Jackie, or Jackie and I, or whatever, grammar be damned. But before each episode, we balance our energy, we protect our space, and usually one of us will either guide us in a meditation or pull a card. And so today I was working with the wonderful angel cards by Kyle Gray, and lo and behold, the card that I picked is the topic that we're doing today. Thank you, Great Spirit. I just can't believe. Actually, I can believe. I do believe. I know. But, just like Jackie just said a minute ago to me before we started recording, I will always be, surprised and, delighted really by how the universe manifests. And so the card that I picked was forgiveness. So before we get in to our, the nitty gritty of the episode today on forgiveness, I wanted to read you guys the angel message that the angels sent us before the podcast started. So forgiveness and understanding. As soon as you see the word forgiveness, you'll know where this energy is needed in your life. Forgiveness is a correction to human vision, an opportunity to see through the eyes of the soul. And ultimately, it gives us an idea of what it's like to see through the eyes of our angels. How beautiful. Whatever the situation that feels heavy on your heart right now, when this card appears, your angel guide is inviting you to release it. You aren't being asked to accept bad behavior or let it go, but to realize that the only person who's truly being affected by your unforgiving thoughts and feelings is you. You don't deserve to have past events get in the way of your present happiness. And that can only happen if you make space by releasing painful experiences from your heart. So, guys, I invite you all today, as Jackie and I are, podcasting, that we all call in our angels and ask them to help us step into the energy of forgiveness. Even if you feel you don't know how to forgive, just the willingness to begin, to say, I'm willing to begin this process. And that will be just enough. How beautiful, Jackie.
So beautiful. And exactly, I'm never surprised. I'm always in awe of how Great Spirit sends us, I don't know, even the topic ideas that we plan to do, because as we go through it, I end up understanding where I need to action these topics in my own life. And forgiveness was a huge one for me. And I mean, the card pull always always
Yes.
bless his great spirit for just reminding us that what we're doing is in alignment to our path. Like, it is helping me heal even things I thought were healed. As we go through these episodes, and I can't be more grateful that we decided to do this together, and how much closer I feel to you yourself just
Aw.
by the process that we've gone through. It's I can't be more blessed. Like, I have you ever just felt like so happy? That's how I feel.
Yes. 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 And that's how I feel about you, Miss Jackie. I am just full of just so much gratitude, for our connection, our friendship, our partnership. It's just probably been one of the most important things that I've ever experienced in my life thus far, besides the
Aww.
birth of my daughter, and that's freaking huge.
It
So
really
thank you.
changes a lot when even just one person shows up for you the way you need to. And
Yes.
I know we don't all have people like that, or we're learning that, the people in our lives maybe haven't showed up for us the way we needed to. And I think a lot of it comes from me being able to express what I need from people in my life. And, you never know how, one seemingly insignificant moment can lead to such a big event. And that kind of, this small decision to join a group of girls introduced me to my best friend, and which has been probably the biggest shining star in my journey, having that, unparalleled support that I don't think I've ever
Yes.
felt. And I mean, we're now a
Aw.
little off topic because I'm just so
Yeah.
grateful for it. But I mean, when we talk about the challenges that we have faced in our journey through trauma to addiction and then to our spiritual awakening, that this topic, especially forgiveness, has probably been one that I've been holding back on. So I do want to start by getting into some of the reasons why letting go of past hurt might be impossible or seemingly impossible for some of us. If I told you there was a deep-seated connection between harboring resentment and the continuous cycle of addiction, how would that make you feel, Elizabeth? Do you
Oh,
do you agree to that
well,
statement?
I do agree to it. And I will say that it took me a long time to get to that place of self awareness where I could even begin to understand what, first, what a resentment really was, and then and how that impeded my progress.
Mm.
And with my choices, all my choices. I mean, because I mean, just like they kind of say in the AA rooms, I mean, you can put the plug in the jug, but the crazy's still gonna be there. I mean, so.
Oh, I love that. Well, today that's what we're going to do. We're going to dive deep into how resentment can keep addicts using, and conversely, how forgiveness can be used to foster self healing. This is a real crucial part to understanding this relationship. It's really key to not just overcoming addiction, but also living a fulfilling life. So, I want to start with what resentment actually means. And you can think of it as holding a grudge or a feeling or being bitter about something that might have happened in the past. But I want you to imagine that as if that was a weight, like a backpack that you've been carrying every single day. For many individuals who struggle with addiction, this is their reality. Resentment fuels their addiction. This acts as both a trigger as well as a barrier to recovery. So when we're faced with these heavy, unresolved feelings, it's not uncommon for individuals to turn to substances as a form of escape. I am a person who has also turned to substances as a form of escapism. But this is where it gets really interesting, because each time we use, what we're doing is essentially putting a Band-Aid over a deep festering wound. It doesn't heal. It just momentarily will feel better. So I'd like to kind of start by talking about what addiction really is. And it's not just a bad habit, and it's not a lack of willpower. I mean, addiction literally hijacks the brain. It makes you think that you need a substance or a behavior in order to survive. This is not just physical, it is emotional and physiological. It is all consuming. And we know this too well. Me and Elizabeth are not opposed to this struggle. We are in the midst of this struggle each and every day from our own journey. So
yes,
I
absolutely.
want to now bring a little bit of awareness to how forgiveness, what we mean by forgiveness in this context. So forgiveness in this discussion is really focusing on the resentment or vengeance towards somebody who has either harmed us or somebody who has seemingly done something wrong to us. But there is a twist, because it's not just about forgiving others. I actually believe that the biggest forgiveness needs to be ourselves.
Yes.
Forgiveness is a crucial piece to the puzzle when we are healing from addiction. And that's where the term, in my head, carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. And for me, it was like this backpack. And you couldn't see the backpack, but if you looked at the way that I walked and the way that I was bent over, it looked like I was carrying a backpack. Like, I got pictures that in my head, I'm walking straight and I'm in this perfect posture. And then I see this picture and it honestly looked like an invisible backpack pulling me down. And really, that is what unforgiveness can feel like. It's a heavy burden, it drags you down, and it has this way of making recovery seem impossible. And, so I'd like you to kind of imagine this, that someone close to you did something to hurt you deeply. And then you're holding on to this hurt can feel like this never ending battle. But when you do decide to forgive, as Elizabeth kind of mentioned before, we're not just laying down our weapons. We're not forgetting what happened, but what we're doing is choosing to move forward without the weight of anger and resentment. This simple act alone can dramatically reduce our stress, anxiety, and depressions, which are also very common triggers for relapse. So that's the first kind of bubble. If you have and are working with people that you need to let go of forgiveness. But secondly, we really want to talk about self-forgiveness. And really, they say many, I'm saying everybody who struggles with addiction beats themselves up for past mistakes. They are trapped in a cycle of guilt and shame. I mean, for me, I am coming back to shameful things that are popping up as I was, typing out my portion for this episode. I'm like, these shameful things of like my actions or things I would say, or, choices that I have made. That was really challenging for me to go back and see some of the choices that I made, because I'm not that same person anymore. Right. So I wouldn't, if it happened now, I would not make that same choice, but I really had to dive deep into it. I had to walk through the shame, and it was harsh. And one thing I had kind of heard, because it started to bring up emotion and tears. So, some individuals, and especially some individuals who are not as connected to their emotional body, fear crying. Some, certain, I guess, men, I'm going to just say it, certain men haven't cried since maybe they were kids. But
I'll have to counter that just for a second, because I am also someone who, I mean, I can now allow myself to cry, but when I started this spiritual healing journey, I was afraid that I had successfully numbed or run from my emotions for so long that when I started, I thought that first, I didn't even know what my emotions felt like in my body. And then second, I was so scared because in my head, I was like, my first sponsor, she was like, what do you think's going to happen, Elizabeth, if you feel this? And I just immediately pictured myself like falling over, going to convulsions. They had to pull me away in a freaking straitjacket. Back to the funny farm you go. And they're like, what happened to Elizabeth? Oh, she felt sad. She felt an emotion.
Well, and that is it. There are so many people who have been completely dissociated from their emotional body in that sense. For me, it's very natural to cry. It is how I release emotions. I've learned that very early on. And I heard this concept that when you think of something that makes you sad, or, makes tears kind of swell up in your mind, as those tears come out, those tears actually hold an energetic frequency of the pain. So as you release the
Mm,
tears, it actually dissipates the pain in your body that is
that
related to
is
what you were releasing. And I just, thought, and I actually sent love to anybody out there who is struggling to be able to process that way, to be able to process it through tears, because it is an immediate release of that energy. Almost immediately. It might take you the next day. For me, a good cry day, the
right.
next day I will feel really, really energized and powerful to, and I think I've mentioned it before, I facilitate those days when I feel the over buildup of energy, but I know myself very well on a emotional level. Um,
Yes.
if I, there is other situations like a physical level that does throw me into like you were talking about that, Elizabeth, and I was thinking about this one instance where I started to have feelings in my body. And I'm not used to feeling things in my body. I feel it in my emotions. So when I felt it in my body, I literally did have like this whole terrifying reaction. And in my head, it was the same thing. Like, it's crazy. How do I process it?
Yeah.
What is this feeling? Why? Like, it made no sense. So when you said that, it totally was like, I'm the exact opposite in when it comes to physical
Right.
sensations in my body. But so
But so similar. And just one more thing for our audience about that. I have gotten, obviously, I mean, I shouldn't say obviously, but I've gotten to a place where I can, feel my emotions, but I do some of my best crying in the shower. And that kind of makes sense because we're 80% water. And so what you said about tears actually holding, I mean, that resonated with me so deeply. And I just, I imagine myself the last time I call them those good, ugly cries,
yeah, oh
and
yeah.
I was in the shower and I just and I just let my head just go, underneath the shower nozzle, and I just cried it out. And so it just makes sense that our bodies are water, our tears, and then the water itself, because I always, ask God to allow me, or great spirit, or what have you, to allow me to use the water from the shower to help cleanse my body. So now it makes sense that
Yeah. I
yeah,
love
it's
that
so
so
beautiful.
much because, you were so right. And then the water in and of itself is a very cleansing attribute to it as well. So I really like that idea of release in that sense. And it
Yes.
really is true, because when I was talking again about the way it felt like with this backpack on me, and that I was actually able to see it, I was starting to have really, really, really bad back problems. And when I had mentioned before, I went to the wellness retreat, and the plant-based medicine, actually what it did is it started me crying. And I was at a point in my life at that point where I had to have this kind of shell on, and I hadn't cried in about a year. I would not allow myself to go down that path because I didn't know if I started, if I'd be able to stop.
Right.
And when the mother ayahuasca came in, my first ceremony, I bawled for a day straight. And like you said, Elizabeth, ugly cry, like I could not stop. And after, my back did not hurt. I still had to work
Oh,
on my posture, but the pain that I felt in my upper back and shoulders was completely gone. And that is the immediate moment I realized that I had been holding all of my pain and emotion and shame and guilt and anything that had happened within that 1 year since I had cried in my back. And that is
wow.
why I started those facilitating those cry days when I felt, the emotion starting to build up, because I never wanted to get back to a place that, it was starting to create physiological symptoms due to emotional baggage.
Absolutely. And I just have to like point out, I love like your business sensibility because you're like, I facilitated cry days. And I just love you, Jackie. Let me put it in my calendar. Today I will
Exactly.
cry.
Well, and I have PVR movies. There's a few movies that always make me cry because I don't necessarily like I'm really good at dissociating, right? We talked about it,
Yes.
right? So I don't necessarily know why I'm feeling that way. Some of the energy is not necessarily even mine because I am very empathic. So a lot of it can be picked up from the collective, the people in my lives, the clients that I work with. So not necessarily do I know that it's something that I need to release in my own journey, or it could have just been something I was carrying for other people, because I do hold a lot of space for the people in my life. And that's why,
Yes.
like, I don't have a practical knowledge necessarily of what it is I'm releasing. I just know I need a good release, and that comes from the self-awareness and many years of not facilitating that separately, and it would come out in my case into these bigger triggering type events because of what I was feeling. It would make me feel very uneasy, and I would then create larger problems because I didn't have that understanding at that time.
Right.
But that's what
Yeah.
really kind of brings us to kind of the practical steps that I kind of thought about for releasing the anger, the guilt, the shame. And it really can be as easy as something like I said, you don't necessarily know, but you have to release, and you put on some sad music or sad movies and just allow yourself to cry. But expressing the feelings is really important. So if you don't have someone as amazing as Elizabeth to talk to about it, you can choose to write it down. Nobody has to read it. You can burn it after, but you can just kind of find a creative outlet to get that out, list it down
Yes.
if you do have that awareness. And that really helps to facilitate your decision to then let it go. And it doesn't necessarily happen overnight. We want to set the intention that we don't want to carry this weight with us any further. And if you are still struggling after that step and you can't really figure out a way to do it, that's when you want to seek support. And like I said, if you don't have an amazing friend or family member in your life that you can talk to that'll hold space for you, there are practitioners. You could do more mainstream therapy, which is amazing. There are amazing people out there. Remember, as Elizabeth had told us before, they work for us. So we're interviewing them to see if they're the right fit. But, hopefully, even if you don't feel mainstream is for you, there's very great holistic practitioners that are there to support this. Myself and Elizabeth have our doors open for anybody who's going through this and needs a little bit of extra support. But that is kind of the practical steps for getting through and releasing some of the denser energy. It might all fully go away, but like I said, we should not be walking around feeling like we're holding the weight of the world on our shoulders. It will start to create physical manifestations of pain and illness in our body. And that's what we're trying to kind of break free from. So before we move
Absolutely.
on, Elizabeth, any other items you would like to add to kind of the practical steps, or anything else that we talked about in the above?
Right. Well, yes. And so, the idea of resentment as an energy that, it can literally get like stuck, on a physiological level, like we've discussed in the body, right? And so I just recently learned that resentment, the Latin, it comes from the Latin for to re-feel.
Mm.
And that was, I mean, when I learned this, and this is, all about our, and I believe we'll be good friends, Mel Robbins, about this is from, my, research and, with her is this Latin, this idea of refeeling something. And so, it is a choice that we, really, even if it's on a conscious or unconscious level, choose. It's like what you said with the backpack analogy. We're making a choice to pick up that backpack full of rocks, full of, resentments, full of whatever, and put it back on every day,
Yeah.
And so we are choosing to re-feel, and
Well, and it's
then,
funny because you had said
yeah.
it like the only person you're hurting is yourself, because the other person
Yes.
probably, sometimes they don't even know that you even harbor any, because most of us don't go out and openly tell people when we're upset with them. We actually just hang on to it ourselves. So you're so right. Like, we're
Exactly.
literally going on a hike up a fucking mountain with a bag of rocks on our back. And we're just like, yep,
Yes.
I'm going to carry this with me because why not? I deserve to be punished more than, the next guy. Like, oh, when you said it like
It's
that, like,
crazy.
seriously, that's so true.
Yeah, it is true. And, and so why do we do that? Well, for one, many people who, use these maladaptive coping strategy, i.e., any type of habitual pattern, whether that be with drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex, what have you, right? We have more than likely been in that survival state of fight, flight, freeze, right? And so this, by harboring this resentment, it kind of, in a way, keeps us safe, because it's like that idea of, okay, one, this is known. This backpack that I'm putting on every morning, this is a known feeling. And so, and this goes back to what you were saying about how addiction, literally hijacks our brain. And so, in the same kind of way, like, emotions like resentment can literally hijack our brain, because it's telling us, oh, we need to refeel this, right? Because this is a safe feeling, because again, we're in the state of fight, flight, freeze, because when we hold on to this resentment, it's almost like we're preparing ourselves, physiologically, just in case it happens again. Right?
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
It's
And so
like
we're,
like I said, like a shield, like a guard.
yes, but
Yeah.
it's like a maladaptive shield
Yes.
or guard, right? And so, I mean, it's huge. And just like, for our listeners out there that are still with us, this is huge. This has been huge for me, like in, the moments leading up to this podcast, to really begin to understand the physiological reasons and as well as the effects, but the reason. And so, in that way, you can begin to have some grace for yourself in this process, right? Of letting go of these dense energies, because we kept them because our body literally told us that, oh no, don't let that go. That's safe. What if this
Yeah.
happens again? What if you get put into a
Mhm.
situation where you're not protected, or you're not, validated, or whatever? You're going to need this, and so that really helped me to, really begin this process. And also, Jackie, like you said, it's like kind of the idea of the further you go, the less you know. you know, because I too, like, just in beginning to, think about this podcast episode, and, my own experience and what I'm going through right now, everything has just aligned perfectly. And, resentments that I didn't even think that I was still holding. Now there were, and I will get into, one kind of big one without like going too deep in it, that I have just recently begun to really focus on letting go of, but it's almost like a whack-a-mole, like that game at the
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God, so then you just knock it back down, but now with, the spiritual awakening, and our bodies literally, like, physiologically, like, the dense energy is all coming to the light. I'm also seeing like little things that I didn't even think, you know what I mean? But all of that weight is holding us down from our, from us being able to create our own heavens right here on earth, So we got to get rid of that shit. So, you know, just before, Jackie, did you want to say anything
No, I
else
think
before I move on?
no, I think that's really profound. Like, I mean, some of the things we said, I'm not even gonna get into it. It's too close for comfort, these episodes, and honestly, it's helping me
Yes.
to like I'm like dissipating. I'm finally forgiving myself. And I think that was the last step. And reading about this. And then there was just, I kept coming back to this scenario in my mind where I was like, I don't know, all squeamish and embarrassed by it. Like, how could you do that? How could you say that to people you care about? You know what I mean? I was like,
Yes.
and every time, and it wasn't like a bad thing. It wasn't. It was like an embarrassing thing. I was like, just
Yeah.
you are literally apologizing for being yourself. Like, stop doing that. Like,
Yeah.
why are
And
you
have
still
grace.
holding on to this shame about who you are? Like, you're different. You're not the same as everyone. You're kind of weird. It'll happen again. Like, let it go. It was just so funny. But yeah,
Right. So
and that's really where it hit home for me the most is just that self-forgiveness. Like, what am I doing to myself here?
yes.
Why can I
Yeah.
forgive the people in my life so easily, and then I hold myself to this unrealistic standard that I would never say to a friend? Like, so yeah, that's, I'm gonna let you move on. What does Mel Robbins say about this, Elizabeth?
Right. Yeah. So let me, tell y'all that, Mel Robbins is a renowned motivational speaker and she's an author. And she has a real unique take on forgiveness and resentment. So basically, she believes that forgiveness is not just a gift that you give to others, but like we've been talking about, it is a crucial step towards our own peace and happiness. And so, we forgive others. Yes, maybe we want to bring people, places, or things back into our life, and this is a path, but ultimately it's for our own soul, for our own, spiritual alignment, attunement, if you will, right? And so we go in, we can talk a little bit more about what resentment really is. So Robbins describes resentment as a toxic, I would say dense, unhealthy, emotion that stems from, feeling wronged or hurt, right? And so, again, we talked about why resentments can be so hard to let go of because, our hijacked brains are actually telling us, no, you got to hold on to this one. No, you got to hold on to this just in case, this comes back up, right? But, it also it can also make us feel, and this was also huge for me, that resentments can make us feel empowered, like I'm holding on to this. It's almost like this sense of righteous indignation, right? But as we've talked about, it can harm us more than it actually impacts the other person. Like Jackie said, most people don't even freaking know you have a resentment
Or
against them,
care. Or care,
or
right?
right. And so, before we really move on to some of the processes of forgiveness, I did want to, really look at, some of the things that Robin says about what forgiveness is not, is forgetting. Just like Jackie said, we're not saying forget what happened. We're not saying that you're condoning what happened by forgiving, right? It's not excusing, your truth, right? It's not pretending that you're still not hurt by a certain action, right? And it also doesn't mean that you have to start trusting that person, place, or thing again, right? And so what forgiveness is, and again, this is, taken from Mel Robbins, is it's a decision that we get to decide. It's a process, right? And so it's not, like Jackie said, it's not going to be I do believe, and so let me clarify that I do believe in spontaneous healings, but okay, I do believe in spontaneous healings, and I also believe that for many people it takes a lot longer than just a moment, especially if you are someone like me who has held on to some pretty huge resentments, from the time that they were a child. And so it is a process and it is a practice, guys. And so, I always think of like Abraham Hicks and how she's like, you never, or Esther Hicks and how she's like, you never, I don't know which to say, Esther or Abraham, but anyways,
One of the
you
Hicks.
never, yeah, one of their Hicks. You never yell at a toddler when they're learning to walk. You never like, get up, you stupid dummy. You know what I mean? I mean, at least, at least I never
I
did
hope
to my
not.
daughter. I never did that to my daughter, and so I was very gentle and kind. And so that's what I encourage you guys out there, to be gentle and kind with yourself as you're going through this process, And so Robbins, she has several different techniques to really help you begin to kind of, break up, if you will, that resentment that has crystallized in your body. And, she encourages us to count backwards. And so this is, really beginning the process of forgiveness. So it's called the 5-second rule. So we count backwards: 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then make the conscious decision, because again, it's a decision, to shift our focus from resentment to empathy. And this is huge. For the big resentment that I will discuss, a little bit, I carried the resentment with no form of empathy for the person until honestly, I was in my late 30s before I was able to do what Robbins is asking us to do is to shift this resentment to a place of empathy. And why is this important? Okay, because understanding one, that we are all flawed humans, a human frailty in all of us, it can be a huge catalyst for the beginning stages of, letting go and forgiving. So, there's just huge transformative power in this. And so, like I said, for me personally, it was really in my late 30s. And it was actually, and this is definitely our drug episode. So for those of you out there that have, that are doing a more traditional approach to changing your mind, body, spirit, and doing, the 12 steps of AA or NA, for me, this happened during, that process of during the 4th step. It is when I began to see, and I was actually talking with my sponsor at the time about, this one particular resentment that I was holding on to. And it was really against my mom for something that I felt, she had totally was neglectful and unable to protect me the way that I needed to be protected as a 12-year-old. And I'm not going to get deep into it, guys, but you can go back to our early episodes and listen to those. And so what my sponsor said after I relayed the story to her was, try to shift the focus to what your mom was going through. So from my mom's perspective, she had just lost her husband, right? My dad was, he wasn't the primary breadwinner, but in the 1980s, he was making over 100,000. My mom was a social worker. She was making probably less than 30,000. And then he passes. She's left with a almost preteen and another teenage, 2 daughters, going from that huge income to a very small income. She was also, going through her own levels of grief during this year, and so from that, just my sponsor, planting those seeds of empathy in me when I was in my mid 30s, it took up to, and guys, I'm going to be real transparent here. I am 49, almost 50 years old, and it wasn't until last week, and with the assistance of a family or relational therapist, that I was finally able to really begin forgiving my mom for, this, what I thought was, unforgivable, honestly, for, and I'm someone who I love my mother. I love her with all of my heart, and it was this one thing that happened over 30 years ago. And I believe, Jackie, I
How are
believe
you
that it
feeling
was,
now? I mean, you just said last week. Wow. And now,
yes.
how are you feeling since the family session?
Well, I'll tell you that I do feel lighter. I do feel freer. I feel like, um, I believe that okay, the memory of that time in my life doesn't have the same energetic hold on me. I mean, just a week before I was talking to someone and I was like, and she did this. And it was like came out as anger, like during that time period.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like when I was looking at that time period, I still had that energy of like, resentment, anger, like, why couldn't you have been there for me, But
Yeah.
then after this family session, like that energetic charge has been lifted.
Yeah.
And it is huge. And I know it's the beginning and I know it's a choice, that I can pick up the backpack. I can put it back on if I want.
Yeah.
I can recharge that energy anytime, but today, God, thank you, Great Spirit. Thank you, Great Spirit. That energy has been lifted. And now, I get to move forward and such the beginning stages of really being able to heal my relationship with my
Thank you
mom.
so much for sharing that with us. And I know that that is something we did touch on an earlier episode. So, friends,
Yes.
looking for a more detailed explanation of some of the challenges or Elizabeth was talking about, that is there. You can always go back. Um, but wow, what a huge step for you. I'm so happy for you.
Oh, thank
And
you
your
so
mom.
much.
I mean, I just love when people at any age realize and support each other in that sense. Like I know, there's a lot you
Yeah,
can dive into it, and both sides has their own, I guess, perspective of what was going on during that time. But then to be able to come
right.
together in love and support doesn't mean you have to walk away with the same, understanding or this or that. But I mean, to just be able to support each other that way because you love each other that much, like that's something really beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I'm just getting beautiful, beautiful waves here, because it was probably because I do love my mom, it's so hard for me even, to let her know I even had a resentment. And, honestly, I like the event that occurred, I had disassociated and, stuff down for so many years and my mom had done the same, and so she was actually able to apologize. And I know that it was sincere and to ask, what can I do, and it was just, it was a beautiful moment. And, guys, this is the beginning of us really being able to, on a deeper level. Because I mean, we can have niceties with each other, but that's not the same as really, getting there and just releasing that energy.
Well, and
And
sometimes
again,
just
yeah,
acknowledging that this happened, that something happened
yes,
and I feel this way, and having that feeling acknowledged can be such a powerful tool for transformation.
yes. And that was what happened. It was acknowledged. It was not blamed on me being a, rebellious teenager, because that happened after the event, not before. And for, years, my mom would just kind of, and that was her own way of dealing with it, and
Yeah.
so I have been able to, see that. But with that, and as Robin says, it's also about setting boundaries, right? So again, forgiveness doesn't mean that, the behavior is condoned, right? I mean, I can still think in my head, well, and I did with my daughter. I was able to upgrade in a sense, and make different choices and reframe things a little bit, even without understanding the process. But that, and it's about setting boundaries with, because again, there was a reason why I kept it, because I didn't feel safe. Right. And so there's certain boundaries that I will continue to set, with my mom. And I, hope that she can begin to, set the boundaries that she needs for her in her life as well. And it means that, forgiveness is all about choosing not to let it control your emotions. Because remember, friends, emotions is energy in motion, right? And so we are making the choice to release that emotion, making the choice not to re-feel that emotion over and over again, and any of those, actions around that, right? And so again, according to Robbins, this is an ongoing process. It is not a one-time decision. And that is so that's really a relief for me, honestly, because, like, and I know it's cliche to say, but I just said to a friend earlier, cliches are there for a reason because a lot of them are true, but Rome wasn't built in a day. So freaking, be gentle, be gentle, be gentle. And also, like what Jackie was saying earlier with like taking on other people's energies, you can make the choice to release an energy and then, come across a person, place, thing where that energy has not been released. And then you can, through, being an empath or whatever, kind of have it reattached to you, if you will, and so then again, it's going to be up to you to one, through, just not needing to numb yourself anymore and getting more in tune with your body and how these emotions, energy and emotion feel in the body, you can just make a choice to let that emotion roll off you, not even penetrate. Just, I like to think of it like the idea of rolling off you like thunder. I don't know if thunder rolls off you, but I guess, like that idea of just rolling off you like thunder. Yeah. That's what I keep on telling to myself. Telling myself. Okay. And so, basically, like I said, it's this ongoing process. So, Robin suggests that we can start with daily affirmations of forgiveness towards, any kind of. So, okay. So if you're in a place where you're like, oh, hell no, I will never forgive that person, place, or thing for their action, then start small, right? And this is a way to kind of build your forgiveness muscle. So, just like maybe, your coworker has a tendency of, I don't know, like picking up their phone during a meeting, and it just irks you every time because they get away with it. But anytime you pick up your phone, the boss looks at you in a certain way, you know what I mean? And so you build maybe a resentment around that. Well, then you can use that, kind of a smaller annoyance as a way to kind of build this muscle, because we're all learning, guys,
and this, it does. If you start small, it gets easier. Like, I mean, the bigger steps don't seem so overwhelming.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And also, guys, Robbins warns against the traps of this idea of victimhood mentality, right? So because if you begin to see yourself as this victim, as being victimized, right, then you're bringing in that energy of the victim, and then that cycle is going to play over and over again, which is what happened to me. And it's interesting, with this idea of the victim, is that I have always, I mean, I have been like hyper independent since I was like 15, you know, and I never considered myself a victim because of that. But it's not, you know, there's um an idea of, you know, you can have been victimized without holding the energy of being the victim, if that makes sense.
It does, because honestly, Elizabeth, I played in that umbrella for too long. I was a
Yes,
victim
and
of
so did I.
circumstance. So all of
Yes,
these bad things that are happening, like I wouldn't have told you that before because I was so freaking headstrong. But it was like
yes,
all of these things happen, and all the choices I made after are because of that. I took away my accountability. I allowed myself to be determined by this instance where, yes, I was victimized. We're not saying none of you were victims. We were
right.
victims. We were
Yes,
victimized. But once
yes,
we, develop that level of accountability, now it's up to us. The onus is on us to reshape that and remove that umbrella and really take our power back. And I think that's what she's
yes.
really getting into there, is that we don't, and I think that's where my self-care had to come in, that forgiveness for myself, because I allowed myself to stay in that victim mentality for longer than I knew I needed to, way longer.
Right.
And it
And
began to shape my entire life. And now I'm trying
yes,
to forgive myself from, even though I knew better, but allowing to continue that cycle a lot longer than it needed to be done. And the boundaries came in later to kind of reshape that. But that's exactly, that spoke to me on a deep level, because it is something I'm still working on, that self-forgiveness on that part, because I knew a lot earlier that I could have, or I could have, or should have, or would have, or however it
yeah,
was.
but don't shoulda on yourself, lady.
But I just, I guess it's, I guess the guilt, for my own self, like I deserved better. I should have showed up for myself better, or you know what I mean? So I letting that go, like you said, don't should have, and I did it again. So I'm letting it go.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Let it
starting
go, let it
now, and
go.
I'm really seeing that, and seeing how that was my comfort zone, that victim of mentality blanket, that umbrella. And
Yes.
I lived there for far too long. And it was on me. I've forgiven myself, or I am forgiving myself for some of the choices I made in that state, because it's been challenging, the self-forgiveness in that
It
sense.
really has. And I was looking through my notes and I about this idea of so there's a difference in, like, again, being the victim. So that is the physical external circumstance. So we are not saying to those of you who have been victimized that you weren't the victim, but playing the victim is the feeling, right? And we'll more than likely have an entire, not more than likely, we'll be doing a whole episode on this idea, but this goes back, this is a feeling. So playing the victim. And so if you're someone like me, who from the time that I was victimized, right? I mean, literally within 6 months, I went from, being a sweet little Afro girl playing the flute to like drinking bottles of Mad Dog and skipping school. You know what I mean? It was like, it was stark, like bam. And so I numbed that all the way up, and so this idea of playing the victim, and this is really interesting, Jackie, and we're going to have to get more into this. Playing the victim, because it was a feeling and an emotion of playing the victim, I didn't even know I was playing the victim, right? And so if you told me, oh, you're just being the victim, I would have been like, what? I've been on my own since I was 15.
Yeah.
I have,
You would have
you
got
know
a
what?
salty response
I know.
back.
Exactly. But really, but now I see all of the relationships that I allowed myself to be in way longer than I needed to be.
Yeah.
All of it stems to holding on energetically, this energy, this feeling, and so
Well,
guys,
and it
this
gave me
is
an excuse. what it did. So when I didn't
Yes.
show up for myself the way I did, or when I didn't achieve, all of the greatness that I know I'm sent to
Right.
achieve in this life, it wasn't because I was too scared. It's not because something bad happened to me that I couldn't. Like, it takes my own ability out of it. Like, the onus isn't on me. This happened, right? Like, I
Right.
can live in this, with my head buried under a rock. I don't have to show up for myself.
Girl,
Like,
this
and in it,
is, yes, beautiful. I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off.
no, it's exactly like you said. And I mean, this episode, I mean, I it just shows me, like, I feel I got to send myself a little bit more love after this, because you know what? You did the best with what you had, with the awarenesses you had then. And I have literally the last few days been giving myself such a hard time, and it is unwarranted. And I mean, we're doing this
We're
during eclipse
all,
season, but just this
yes,
episode, when I'm done this, it's gonna be like a whole Jackie self-love day, because
yes.
seriously, what have I been, why do I even allow myself to go into that energy? Like, you did the best with what you had. As soon as my awareness grew enough that I knew that I had to show up for myself better, I had to create proper boundaries, that I was not going to
Mhm.
allow myself to make choices based on one or a scenario of instances that had happened. I'm
Yes,
not going to be defined by that. I refuse to allow that to be the definition for my life. And I have a
yes.
now, like, this
Amen. A woman.
this new energy, like, in my body at this
Girl.
moment. So
Right now, I
right
know I'm
now,
feeling
yeah.
it too. It's so
Freaking Mel
freaking,
Robbins and your amazing words.
I know. And let me tell you that, like, just everything you said, like, I mean, today I can, have empathy for myself. And that is huge. And Mel Robbins, I mean, some of the exercises that she discusses, while we're going through this revolutionary, liberating, releasing of these long dormant energies is self-care, is just, we can write letters of forgiveness if, if that person, place, thing, has, if it's something exterior that you need to forgive, write a letter about it. Some people will write letters and then burn the letter if the person is, no longer here or whatever. And just practicing that self-care, guys, knowing that we are worthy vessels just for being born, right? Just for being born, we are worthy enough to allow these emotions to dissipate and to know that we are safe, and this is all about coming into that state of homeostasis, right? Because that is where the real healing begins.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What a
Guys,
good episode today. I mean, we could unpack this for hours, I bet. But
yes.
I mean, I don't know. I feel revitalized for the day.
Yes, same here. I'm also going to do some self-care. I'm off for the rest of the day, so I'm going to be and today, oh my God, girl, today is freaking Easter. I had totally forgot.
It is Easter Sunday.
Oh my.
Up next week? So
Yeah,
everybody
yeah.
enjoyed their
Well,
beautiful
yeah.
Easter.
Yes. And guys, just so much love and light. Okay, let's move on, my illustrious Jackie.
Well, I actually think that we're pretty much wrapped up for the day. So I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us as we discuss how we can learn to foster an energy of forgiveness in the face of addiction. Your comments and perspectives are so important to us. So we would love it if you would reach out. If you have a question for us to explore on our show, or any other question concerning our podcast, please reach out to us at sexdrugsandspiritualitypodcast@gmail.com.
And if you'd like to contact us about our individual client offerings, please check the link in our description, or click the link in our description, and be sure to mention that you heard about us on Spotify. And we so look forward to connecting with our spiritual community at 11 p.m. EST every Saturday on Spotify to explore and integrate the shadow side of our reality.
Bye, friends.
Bye, guys. Love and light.
Love and light.
Sex, Drugs, and Spirituality Podcast. Elizabeth Maria, Unlimited LLC. And Jackie Lyons of Akashic Energy Healing is not responsible nor liable for any advice, course of treatment, diagnosis, or any other information, services, or products that you obtain through this website.